Hey William, let's take a look at your week 2 assignment 3 drawing here. One thing I'm seeing from this assignment that I'm already liking more than what I was seeing in the last one is just a more comprehensive use of the marker in place. We talked about it before, but it just felt like there was altogether too much colored pencil being used to do things like shading and filling in, the area. And so just kind of working with marker for the majority of this is, for me, just working out better. I think you're also just experimenting with color, which is good. The oranges, the reds, the blues, and things like that. I think the layout is still kind of problematic. I think that the arrangement that you had here, it's very similar, but you still have some issues where objects are kind of moving into other parts of other objects. So we're kind of seeing that occur here, where the square is kind of moving, the cube is moving into the sphere that's next to it. So you have to just kind of make sure that if it's overlapping an object, that it's actually kind of in front of that object, and you have to make sure on the ground plane, where this object kind of touches the ground, that part is actually in front of whatever object is behind it. So the sphere actually should be coming up a lot higher than what it is right now. There are a lot of components missing to this drawing. You've got color in place, and you're attempting to get some textural stuff in place, which is good, but there's a lot of other things kind of missing. We can take a look at another student's work from another class, where you can see the kind of level of kind of work that went into the shading aspect of this, not even kind of considering the kind of textural work, but just the shading, how it goes from a highlight to a shadow tone for things in the sphere, and how the lighting situation is for the most part consistent. I would say this could actually use a little bit more value adjustment, but how the light feels like it's coming from the top and from the left, and it's hitting all these objects kind of on the same area. It's hitting the tops of the cubes, it's hitting the tops and the sides of the cylinder, the cone, and on the same side on the sphere. And this is kind of a big thing that's going to help to give everything a certain amount of form, kind of the three-dimensional aspect. It's going to make it feel more realistic, and it's something that's not present in your shapes. We don't see any shading on the sphere. There's no transition from a highlight area to a shadowed area. There's no kind of differentiation between the top plane of this cube and the side plane and the front plane. No differentiation between the top plane of the cylinder and the kind of the bottom of it. So there are some things that are occurring here that could very easily have some value put into them. With the blue cylinder, you could go in with a gray marker and just start to lay in a little bit of value on the one side, depending on where you want your light source from. But I'm just kind of making, just to kind of generalize from the left to the right. So having some darker marker here, and then maybe with some white colored pencil adding a highlight, putting a little highlight on the top of the cubes, and then shading some of the sides. I think these are things that will help to make it at least start to have a little bit more form to the shapes. Some cast shadows could help as well. Just a little bit of an 80% gray underneath the shapes to create a cast shadow. And again, that needs to be consistent as well. If it's kind of moving in this direction for one of the objects, it should be doing so for the rest of the objects as well. The other thing is, I think you just need to take more time with your drawings. These drawings, kind of the underlying drawing overall, feels very, very rough, and things like perspective, things like even just kind of symmetrical things like the sphere being just kind of a nice even circle are not in place. Your cone is kind of leaning off to the side, and the cubes themselves don't feel like they have too much perspective being applied. So this is something, even before you start laying in the marker, that you want to make sure everything is nice and clean and neat and symmetrical and lining up and all that kind of jazz that we deal with in drawing class, and then kind of worrying about how to put in the marker and the texture. So there's a lot of things I think you'll have to kind of think about as we move to the next week, but I think trying to get at least getting some idea of the value system and how you can start layering marker to create some value and kind of try and work a little bit more on the drawing will start.